This podcast is brought to you by PLI, the Practicing Law Institute. PLI is committed to keeping you ever current on the dynamic trends shaping the legal world. Learn more at pli.edu/ftpod.
Welcome to Fast Tracked, Emergent Issues in the Legal Profession, brought to you by the Practicing Law Institute. I'm your host, Jen Leonard, founder of Creative Lawyers. Buckle up as we hit the gas and explore the most dynamic trends shaping the legal world. I hope you'll join us as we explore the future of law today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fast Tracked podcast, where we talk all about emergent issues in the legal profession. My name is Jen. I'm the founder of Creative Lawyers, and I have the great opportunity to interview some of the most fascinating people across legal. And this is actually our final episode of the Fast Tracked podcast for season 2. And I could not think of a cooler way to end the season, where we've explored all sorts of topics, than to invite my friend and incredible thought leader, Jae to the pod. Hi, Jae. Great to see you.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for spending your very valuable time with us. Just to let the audience know who you are, if they don't already, Jae has been a thought leader and expert in the legal profession for a while now, having held lead roles in innovation and pricing in some of the world's most prestigious and global law firms. She has also been the founder of her own consulting company and sought after consultant. She also analyzes the legal industry, including her creation and deep analysis of the AmLaw Power Rankings for the American Lawyer. I know many of the people listening wait with bated breath for that to come out every year to hear what you have to say. And you have just co-founded with the fabulous Ed Stone a new venture called Lumio. So you have seen this industry from every different angle, and I'm delighted to have you here today at such an interesting time to dive in and learn what you're seeing. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yay. So let's dive right in, but let's start from a zoomed out lens. If people have not yet read your work in the American Lawyer this year, I definitely recommend your pieces, including the piece called Edge of Chaos, where you're talking about, sounds a little bit scary, but I think you and I both think there are huge opportunities for people who are really paying attention, talking about all of the change and turmoil in the profession and what it means for the industry. So zooming out, what were the biggest trends that your analysis revealed from the numbers in 2024?
Yeah, this year was a really interesting one. I've been saying in a lot of the briefings over the last few years, like every year since 2020 has been really an anomalous year, and that has felt like an exception. There was a sense of immediacy and urgency and kind of what shaped the legal market and like law firm performance in 2020, which is obviously a crisis year. And then 2021 was kind of a boom year because all of the work that had been put on ice while everybody dealt with COVID like came roaring back. You know, the year after that was a little bit of a dip year, a correction year, and then a recovery year for that, right? And then so the shadow of COVID-19 was still very much on the market. 2024 for me was a super interesting year because I think it's the year of reckoning where some of the strategic choices that firms made before and during and then after COVID really started to show itself in the way that firms are evolving and in performance profile and the strategic choices they're making. We are seeing strategies actually pay off. So this idea that choices do matter, that you do have, agency and control over like how you actually prioritize your investments, how you direct the efforts of the partnership, the strategic choices to do one thing at the expense of another, to do some things before you do others. You're really seeing not just a stratification, I really think that the exclusive or primary focus on the profits or the kind of eye-popping numbers or the size of these firms kind of maybe distract from some of the core issues that leaders, partners, and all lawyers should really be thinking about the future of the profession and the business of law, right? To me, a lot of the tectonic shifts that are coming require a lot of preparation and reflection about why do law firms even exist? Why does the legal profession exist within the context of the clients they serve, as well as kind of the talent pool that is moving through education, formation, like maturation, like in the practice of law as practitioners, like all of that is about to change very dramatically, right? Which is why the choices from the last 5 years and the choices that firms are making right now, the next probably 3 to 5 years, are going to reverberate through generations. I think not even just one generation. I think we are at that kind of inflection point, but also in a place where I think that, causal, not just correlational, like connections can be drawn from what legal businesses are choosing to do and then the performance they achieve in the marketplace. So I think 2024 for me was really about segmentation, not just stratification in terms of money, but what is it that the firms are trying to do? What kind of clients are they serving? What kind of problems do they want to work on for those clients? And I think a greater sense of maybe identity, mission, purpose that is emerging in different segments, if that makes sense.
It does. And I love the question of why do you exist in the first place when it comes to clients. I asked my students this, and you've been a guest to my design thinking class before and our AI class. And it's amazing how seldom anybody asks when you're entering the profession, like, why do you even serve a purpose? What is your role vis-a-vis the clients? And equally surprising how few people have a really good answer for that because it hasn't been articulated well, I think. I really want to dig into your use of the word strategy and the idea that some of the strategic choices are starting to bear fruit or not. What do you mean by the strategic choices? What are some of the specific choices you've seen firms make that are now paying dividends or not? And relatedly, is it too late for firms who haven't made those strategic choices to follow suit, or do the benefits go to the early movers?
There's a lot in that question. I'm going to unpack it. But first, I think law firm strategy is really elusive, or a concept that's elusive to individual practitioners, because it really gets to the core of what a partnership is, right? Every partner kind of has a go-to-market strategy, a position that they envision for themselves as practitioners of the law. It coalesces around, questions of identity, like what practice am I in? What kind of lawyer am I, right? What kind of problems do I solve? So my strategy versus our strategy, especially as firms become bigger and more complex, is increasingly harder for individual practitioners to really wrap their arms around what is the platform that I'm joining? Like, what is that? What's the implication for my career? And then what's my responsibility as a owner of the business to like contribute, give input, and have influence on the direction of the firm, right? So I think that's one factor that is very, kind of a departure from classic strategy, that like the thinking that's evolved around corporations, where there is a very clear decision structure and there's a clear hierarchy, a decision cascade, very clear decision roles. The other piece that's really interesting about the law firm business model is that platform is now kind of like on everyone's lips, right? Like in our generation, with the rise of technology, with the rise of, internet-based businesses, like going back to the 90s and 2000s, where businesses actually play an intermediary role, platform business models are kind of winning the day. The truth is that law firms have always been platform businesses. They attract talent first, right? They either grow or attract now market leading expertise. It's those experts that draw the clients. So in effect, the law firm has always been a platform. So as against that backdrop, some of the strategy choices that firms really need to make are really intertwined. And some of them, to get to the latter part of your question, legacy choices, the accumulated, kind of impacts of historical choices do matter. So I'll give some examples. Like by 2024, firms have been making footprint choices for a few decades. You got to work with what you got there. The practice lineup too, essentially are the, what is in the brains of the bodies that in the offices in our geographic footprint, right? Those two things I think are really hard to unwind, but then the most subtle kind of vector of strategy that is difficult and costly to change is the work type. So the value profile of the work that you want to do how credible and trusted are you with clients to give you like those instructions? Like what kind of problems are you solving, right? So the work mix, practice lineup, geographic footprint, I think those are strategy choices where you really have to honor your legacy. Think about the founder's intent, think about like the big decisions the firm has made in the past, and then build on the assets that you have. Deal gently, maybe with the past choices that need redirecting or unwinding. So those are three choices where I think history matters a lot. Although I think the next 10 years are super interesting for the other ones. I think that sector specialization, sector depth is certainly a, strategy vector that is newly kind of emerging as a key topic for law firm leaders. And by sector, I mean client sectors. So will you specialize, your expertise, the application of your expertise for a tractable set of clients based on their business? Like, will you dig in and learn more about what is happening in the world around those clients? What is the competitive reality around those clients? What's the operating reality for the human beings working in certain types of businesses, whether that's technology, energy, two areas where we're seeing immense changes happen that's going to impact actually the work and lives of like almost everybody in the world, right? Healthcare, another place that's highly regulated where big advancements, breakthroughs do require very high touch and very bespoke, specialized legal expertise to be applied to very specialized, bespoke kind of innovations that are happening, right? So sector specialization, I cite that one as immensely important because that is really the underlying framework for client focus and client centricity. So if you think about the two things that clients have asked for over and over again over the last 40 years since the ACC kind of formed and then became, a forum for the voice of the client to generate these kinds of requests to the sell side. It's understand my business and help me look around corners. Really the cornerstones of kind of the trusted advisor model and the classic thinking of David Maister and what firms are supposed to do. I think sector focus is a really elegant way to direct lawyer attention to the years long, maybe decades long endeavor of actually acquiring that expertise, right? To sit alongside the legal expertise that's in your core business. Like, will you invest the time and energy to choose where you will specialize, to choose that path of learning, right? Like actually lifelong learning about the business of your clients. So sector focus is super important. I think service model is another vector that's super interesting in the next decade. With the rise of generative AI, we're going to see the maturation of the application of that technology, AI being really general purpose. But, how will we shape the deployment and activation of this really new powerful capability into the way that lawyers think about their job, the way the lawyers, actually generate insights, the way they discharge the work? What will that do to the practitioner experience? What will that do to the client experience, right? So service model, how you discharge the work is incredibly important. And then lastly, I get to reach. And I come to that one last because I think that's one of the strategy vectors that is most misunderstood. You can spend a lot of time and energy articulating your brand, but truly brand is what your clients, competitors, and the market thinks of you, right? So brand is an outcome of all of these choices. And then so being able to state very clearly your aspiration for the future, the brand that you want to have in the future, what you want to be known for, what the mental associations that you want people to have when you think of your brand, like that's got to line up with all these other choices that you're making, right? So the 6 vectors of law firm strategy really have to be adapted into the backdrop, not only, the platform business model, but really the cultural implications of working inside a partnership. And then so that's like everything I mean when I say law firm strategy, but to put it very simply, I'll actually give a shorter definition. Strategy is simply a set of thinking tools. It's a set of thinking tools that's supposed to help an organization close the gap from its current reality to its future aspirations. And then so the exercise is really to look courageously at your current reality and to be honest about what it is that you have that's strong. Where are the things that are working really well? What are some things that are not working so well? And then what is the change you want to effectuate in your position, in your competitive position, right? Your future aspirations. And you need courage and boldness to really articulate a vision that is realistic but ambitious, right? So strategy is just frameworks and thinking tools that helps you kind of answer those questions in a fact-based way. So that was a long answer. And I think that it's never too late. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is right now. Like the idea that it's too late, that's like defeatist. And if that is really the morale and the defining kind of like emotional state of the partnership, then, probably a tidy path to dissolution or a merger or something like that is a better path forward, because people really do have to feel excitement for the future, right? So my answer is, okay, it's never too late. And if you haven't started, you do need to start like right now.
So I hope you've cleared your calendar, because I have 5 hours of follow-up questions from everything you just said. Hopefully that's cool with you and you have nothing else to do today. So much great stuff to unpack, but I want to ask a threshold question, which is, so much attention gets focused on the AmLaw 20, AmLaw 50, AmLaw 100, AmLaw 200. And I know people are out there saying, I'm a boutique litigator, or I work only in this one tranche with a partnership of 4 other people who work in the same sector, or I'm a government lawyer. Why should they care about any of the things that you and I are talking about today?
That's a great question. I often get asked why I spend so much time like kind of focusing on the AmLaw 100 or the very top of the market. Why don't I, think more about like small law or medium law, etc. Right? To me, I think that an elegant answer to that is that the legal market is not a monolithic whole. I think it is a series of interconnected micro markets. But truly, if you want to have the most accurate view of your current position and some sense of confidence that you understand the range of possibilities for you individually and as a business going forward, it is important to understand it is interconnected. They are related markets. As you choose, the markets in which you will compete for talent and for clients, you at least have to broaden the boundary of your thinking to their reasonable alternatives to choosing you, right? Why will lawyers choose to work on your platform, to join your firm, to stay? Because just like marriage, I really do feel like you don't join a firm the first day you get hired. You wake up every morning and you decide to stay at that firm, right? And why will clients choose to give you the assignments in a day when they have more and different choices than ever before? It's not just traditional law firms that certainly corporate clients are looking at. They have a lot of pathways. So really it's asking those questions as against a broader backdrop of what's happening in the world. Why do clients need lawyers today? Because those reasons are actually quite different than the reasons from like 100 years ago. There are certain things that have stayed the same. But really, the emerging pressures on business and the emergent possibilities of new innovations, the change in the geopolitical context, the macroeconomic context around business and also around consumers, that's changing quite a bit, right? So this curiosity about the world around us, and then, a heightened sense of competitor awareness, client awareness, and like kind of market awareness, I think those are the things that actually help lawyers, you know, tune into the concrete reasons why they're needed. And I think if framed in the right way, it can be a really enriching discussion and dialogue that helps them like actually feel meaning and purpose in their work if they have a clear sense of mission, a clear sense of focus, and a clear sense of their value proposition, right? So I think, no, everybody can't know everything about everything. You've got to pick, but one of the reasons I continue to do the AmLaw work is because in the annual analysis that I publish, my intent is really to try to give an efficient overview of the broadest context possible around a certain segment, right? And certainly it is corporate legal buy and it is large law firms. But I think some of the issues that get floated up in that analysis are going to have second and third order impacts for a huge group of people.
Mhm. That's great. And it brings us back to some of the themes that you saw and wrote about in your Edge of Chaos analysis. And you talk in that piece about a break from the traditional expansion strategies that started to take shape in 2024. And you talked at the beginning about how some of this data may feel a little bit noisy because of the COVID disruption and the catch up year and then the correction year. So, can you tell us what some of the earliest signals of the shift that you're talking about in 2024 were that I suspect most law firm leaders probably did miss because of the swirling chaos around them? What were some of those things that you saw?
Yeah, I think that one of the things law firm leaders miss was the sustained pace and velocity of change, that the market was going to be much more volatile coming out of COVID, and not just that year or the year after. That does obviously have political implications in terms of what's happening in the United States. I think that was reason to expect a higher rate of volatility and uncertainty in the operating environment around clients. I think the savviest law firm leaders saw that coming, right? I think I want to say that a lot of law firms really have been hoping for like normalization, right? Since 2020, I think. I mean, and honestly, like I have empathy for that. We all want that, right? We all want things to stabilize a little bit. But for the foreseeable future, there's going to be quite a bit of market turbulence. And I think the highest performing firms in 2024 were geared up for that, right? To actually help their clients navigate that turbulence. I think that's one key thing. If you go all the way back, though, to kind of like the 90s and you look at like the broader arcs of history, I think you can see who the leaders are and who the followers are. And the leaders are almost always the ones where the shadow of the future is much longer in their thinking. They're thinking much further ahead to emerging trends and thinking big, right? Even if you're not operating globally, right? If you're serving clients that have that global perspective, then you do need to care about what's happening with capital flows, trade, the movement of goods and people across, geographic boundaries. And then, so if you think about the rise of globalization, like along with the rise of the internet and then the creation of the World Trade Organization, and then you kind of look at 2008 as a wake up call of like over connectivity, perhaps, and, the scaled up risks of a super connected world without the attendant kind of de risking mechanisms. Then you look at the backlash, and I think really the rise of Trumpism in the US and the Brexit in the UK in 2016, that ought to have been a wake up call. That globalization, even though a lot of the infrastructure was going to be hard to roll back, that there was going to be adjustments to how globalization feels, right? Very similarly, I think the firms that are succeeding now are very intentional about how, when, and where to grow. And they're really majoring in on the work they want to do for the clients of their choice. That's what I see. I think that firms that are still thinking in abstractions about we need to get bigger, we need to get more profitable, like we need to have this size and shape without a lot of like, that's like the what, right? And then I think they turn to consultants like the work that I used to do for the know-how. Like, we want to get bigger. How do we do it? I think the leading firms actually know why they're trying to do whatever it is they're doing. And then the know why is actually going to inform the how, right? So those are some of the divisions I see in how firms are thinking about strategy and executing on it.
Great. So it sounds like you're seeing a segmentation between visionary leaders and those who are sort of going year to year cycles, thinking in the old ways and focusing on metrics that are short term. And I want to go back to your phrasing around thinking big, maybe by thinking small, and pointing to one of the predictions that you made in your piece around bionic boutiques. So can you talk to me about what a bionic boutique is? You predict that we'll have bionic boutiques start to emerge in the next 5 years. What are they? And what do they look like culturally, operationally? What is their service model? Tell us more about that.
I think probably at least for the last 25 years, some segment of the legal market has been talking about tech-enabled services, right? how will technology change the profession? And that's a very broad kind of philosophical question. But there have been waves of technology since the 90s. I think we are in a different era now. Like after GPT-4 released like 2 years ago, we're definitely in the AI era. AI is going to make a difference. AI is going to shape the range of possibilities in the future. For me, a Bionic Boutique is a firm that is not AI first, but AI native in the sense that they do have that AI lens to the way they think about talent development, about the discharge of work, about how the firm is designed, set up, and how the firm operates, right? A Bionic Boutique will be a law firm that's got AI significantly integrated and deployed at every layer of the organization, not just in the infrastructure, but the experience of the people that work there that really think about how will AI help us generate revenue? How will AI actually impact our P&L, right? So a Bionic Boutique to me is AI native. That's not to say that, AI will displace lawyers, and we'll get to that I think at the bottom of the conversation here. But, I think that for firms that really embrace the possibilities of I published some predictions with numbers that like seem artificially precise and then really outlandish, but my intent in publishing predictions, I have been doing that for the last like 6, 7 years. It's because I believe predictions are a great framing device for rich dialogue. I think that when people are reacting to a proposition, they think a little bit harder. I think that the dialogue becomes actually more concrete about how these things happen today and what's going to change. And I did want to give a sense of the direction and magnitude of the changes I see coming. So sitting here today, the top practitioners, and these are like named individual legendary superstar lawyers. We know that, we crossed the $3,000 an hour mark just recently. It has taken about 9 to 10 years from the $1,000 mark, $2,000, $3,000 mark. So essentially what this prediction says is that arc, like we're going to hit a hockey stick where the top of market expertise is going to be worth much more than 3 times as much within the next 8 years. So that to me is an indication of acceleration and magnitude. And the $10 million RPL, to me, that number is very significant because even at like the highest rates and, noting that only like top of market practitioners will ever get near that $10,000 mark, just like there's probably 100 lawyers that are kind of hovering on the $3,000 mark today. $10 million requires an uncoupling of revenue from hours. $10 million requires that we finally take a step back and like do the mental exercise and the difficult commercial discussion with the buyer of what the work is actually worth, not what it costs us to produce it, right? And I think that both things are really important shifts that have been long in the making. And I'm sure you've been at conferences where I've been on stage taking the unpopular position. Like it's my view, and it still remains, that the billable hour will never die. The billable rate is the simplest way for people to buy expertise in areas they don't understand, to tackle problems that are not fully, clear to either buyer or seller. When you are buying top of market expertise to give shape to ambiguous problems, really do novel thinking to create new solutions that are bespoke to you, the hourly rate is still the simplest way to buy, and simplicity in and of itself is a value proposition, right? But I do think the sun is setting on an age where the time and materials model is actually the core organizing principle of legal business. That's the default way everything is sold, and that's the default way that lawyers are measured from a business standpoint. I think we are going to see the sunset on that age. About that, I'm very happy.
Same, for lots of reasons. And, I want to sort of couple the conversation about the very top of the market in terms of the really superstar experienced partners who can command those kinds of rates, and the people just coming into the profession today. I just had lunch yesterday with one of my just amazing students who is doing a lot of self-education around AI and what it means for his future as a lawyer. And part of that is because there's right now so little formal structure for new lawyers to think about what it will be like to practice alongside AI systems. So, what do you think the future of lawyer formation and legal education should look like and will look like as we enter and continue to move through this AI era?
It's such a big, broad. I actually do want to stay for like 5 hours and dig into this because I mean, this is like literally where your intellectual passions and mine like overlap. I want to take a step back and say something that is probably going to sound hurtful, but I think it's a hard truth that we, need to confront. For many institutions, like these tectonic shifts in what technology is going to do to work and life, like they really need to take a hard look at their history and make intentional decisions about what they're going to bring forward into the future. Like, what is the best of the historical traditions that help them get where they are and stay at the top of the market? What are the things they need to actively discard and change in their thinking, right? And here I'm referring to kind of the historical T14, the historical kind of like white shoe firms in New York and in other global financial centers, the nationally renowned firms that have really proud history in their home markets and then have done amazing work across the country and the world. That's not to say you have to kill the past. That's not what I'm saying at all, right? But I think without that level of introspection, it's victory that will defeat them. And I think that sense of complacency in some of the leading institutions in the world, like to me, that's very concerning, right? Because I think the legal academy has not kept up so far with, the third industrial revolution and the information age. Like the integration of technology into legal education has been inadequate. I think that obviously has deeper roots in what the function of the legal academy is in preparing lawyers for practice. And there are many existential, kind of almost religious beliefs that, we have to examine. So in terms of, what I think they will do and what I think they should do, there's probably going to be a lot of distance because, as much as I wish I were, I'm not queen of the world and it's not up to me. So, I think I will say too, this is not limited to the legal academy. We are, I don't know if you saw the Atlantic article that came out recently about the graduate gap.
Yep.
And how college graduates are having like a really hard time in the job market.
And it's sort of, I think it mirrors the uptick in law school applications, which is always sort of a marker of volatility at that entry level point and the inability to get a job. But this might be one of the first times where the legal industry is undergoing so much turmoil too. That concerns me.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think that without that context, it's really easy to read that as greater demand for a legal education of really law firms, maybe catching the overflow of people who are not successful in securing a role in the job market today, who are actually just doubling down on risk in terms of like debt to finance that education, may not actually be entering legal study or legal profession as an affirmative choice, but maybe like holding position. So I think those are really interesting questions. But having said all that, right, I think that one of the things that's being lost in the AI discussion is this false binary of, will AI displace humans completely? Or, if it's like pointed at enabling function, like, oh, is that just protectionism and we're not being true to the full promise of AI? That is a false binary that actually is very harmful to the way that people think about AI, the way people will explore AI. And then so I want to offer an alternative, which is that the modality of the human machine interaction is now possible with generative AI and just like literally the reduction of the friction in that interface, right? Is going to allow for a level of collaboration, human machine collaboration, that's never been possible before. I think it's actually teaching of that collaboration that is most critical, not only in legal education, but education at every single level. I think, like, I'm sure we'll dig into kind of the AI teammate and the virtual teams of AI that will be joining the workforce imminently, is probably going to stay a feature of the workforce. I think it's actually instructive without like adding in all of the scary parts of like making AI seem like a person. Like that's not, let's like set aside like general AI. Let's set aside whether AI is human, right? Like, those are not relevant or germane to the point that I'm trying to make, which is that the skills people need to make effective use of AI are not that different than the skills that we try to teach children to be effective human beings, which is to work with others, right? And then so it's expanding our understanding of collaboration. It's expanding our understanding of how people think together, how people have ideas together, and how people can have ideas and think through, difficult problems, like explore the problem space, generate like different scope of solution possibility with a thought partner that is, artificial rather than human intelligence. And then so yeah, I know that's like kind of a way up in the rafter, like high level answer, but I think it is really actually a profound, challenge that educators really need to apply themselves to. Because so much of certainly like education in the Western civilization tradition has to do with individual competency. Yeah. Like how much you're absorbing, like ingesting, how much you can recall, how much you can apply on your own. And then we try to like bolt on teamwork and like group projects and like, oh, well, I don't know, go play sports and learn teamwork there, right? I think cognitive teaming is a truly important exercise that, we need to practice as, children and as adults. I think that is going to be a huge shift that should happen. Will it happen in classrooms in law schools around the country? I don't know. I think we're going to have to supplement that ecosystem for quite some time.
I 100% agree. And like you, I love thinking about the macro sort of changes and the metacognition needed to think about how you collaborate with humans and machines and create new versions of teams. And I get to have these cool conversations with you and others. And then I talk with law students or recent grads, and they are very much, understandably following what they're told to do by their new employers, for example. And when you talk with them, it doesn't sound fundamentally different from when I entered the profession in terms of what they're told to be focusing on, right? They're told to develop their legal skills. They need to be billing hours. And that's certainly where they should be focusing their time to succeed for now. And I sometimes worry that we're doing such a disservice to younger junior people by not reimagining the way that we educate. Yeah. And so like I'm trying in a one-off way to help support new lawyers in thinking differently. And I'm curious what you would say to a new lawyer who's just, my firm is telling me to learn how to do legal research and writing and bill and like all the things. And they don't have the kind of benefit we have of a more macro view. So how would you help them shift their mindset to think broadly about their futures?
So first of all, I think, again, I'm going to start at the very top with choices that are maybe not apparent, where I believe young people starting out in their careers, they have much more power and agency than they realize. The world is actually shifting to people who take control of their destiny early on. And then so you have to take ownership of your career path and your career choices. And it begins with entering the job market from a position of confidence and introspection. And that is to say, don't join a law firm where partners look at what's happening with AI and their first response is, we don't need first years anymore. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of those conversations and, my reaction, and you've seen me in these boardroom settings, you've seen me in sessions with partners. And my question to them is, where do you think second years come from? Like, for firms that are willing to sell out their own future or to entrust to others the training of young lawyers, I think they are entering a business that is quite different from how we envisioned the firm in the past, right? Because the true purpose of a firm, what they make, is lawyers. Law firms are still the setting where the best lawyers in the world are minted in law firms, right? So from the recruiting position, look for firms that talk to you about how they're going to invest in you and to prepare you for a future that is changing very fast. Look for that and then hold them accountable to give you those resources and at least a space where you can explore and learn new skills. If enough young lawyers, enough law school graduates bring that expectation to the job market, the firms will comply. It is a functioning market. They do need to rely on some pipeline of very highly trained, highly, like talented strivers to want to join the platform and to want to continue that tradition, right? So at least collectively, law school graduates do have that power. And on that one issue, they should be speaking with one voice that firms should be thinking about, enabling them and giving them a space to actually learn how to work with AI in legal practice. I mean, to me, like, I want to put that in like giant letters and post it at every law school. They probably wouldn't let me. So that's like one thing, right? But one idea I wanted to introduce, that this is like one of the reasons I was super excited to come today. One of the AI mantras that I hate, and it's like this kind of hangover from the way we've been thinking about, technology the last 30 years, is like, oh, the way to do it safely is to put it to low stakes, like simple tasks. Like, let's not give it difficult things. Let's not give it important things. Let's essentially treat it as an intern. And the way that like AI is framed and positioned like that, right? At Lumio, we reject that premise. We're going a completely different way with that, because I think that if people really understood the ramifications of the jagged frontier, like Ethan Malik writes about this eloquently and prolifically, AI is great at something and really bad at others. In that way, they're like high potential junior people. And to kind of condescend to the level of the stuff they do the worst, or, if I put it differently, like, okay, if it does well at unimportant rote tasks, that's not going to impress anybody, right? When it fails at simple, low value tasks, it's actually going to increase anxiety around, senior people's willingness to try it, willingness to spend time giving it more chances. And then, so I think that is really important. We design the workplace, we design the work to give our AI teammates the best chance of success, to have an impact on the, shared work of the team and the organization. And then, so looping back around to, lawyer formation, one of the things that has eroded in the last 10 years is the sense of apprenticeship and the quality of training that's given to young lawyers. If we can deploy AI to actually amplify the and attention of senior partners and to ingest some of that expertise in an interface with capacity that is infinitely more scalable than partner attention, because truly that's the most valuable thing in a law firm, right? And the thing that I think that helps young lawyers develop is feedback. It's feedback on their work. And there are certainly ways to build AI solutions that can mimic or approximate the feedback that a young lawyer would need from, even a senior associate, a junior partner, or a senior partner. Like the iterations that are possible with AI for associates to kind of bounce ideas around, like, not only, I'm not saying this as an alternative to research or fact-based work, right? But in that ideation space where really they're developing their judgment facility, like AI creates like a paradigm where they can get much more feedback and signal than they've gotten in the past, right? That's just one example of reimagining what lawyer formation looks like. If we can just kind of shed these presumptions or mantras about technology serving us anymore because they're not accurate anymore, So how do we actually harness the jagged frontier? How do we rethink the role of like student teacher, maybe coach, mentor, like guide? Like, how do we cast the right role for our AI teammate? I think this is thinking that should be done not only in the legal academy, but in law firms and in law departments. Like we should be thinking about how do we use AI to help develop lawyers? Because that's a totally different path than like, well, how do we just give them some help, or how do we like displace them, So I think that's the thinking I hope to see.
I could not agree with you more. And I think, to the point of mantras that are harmful or mindsets that are harmful, one of the things I see, the very first use case that excited me about generative AI was as a coach and an augmenter of lawyer formation and legal education. And, I'll get pushback from people. Well, we shouldn't be adding a machine here. That should be a human. But there is no human there now, right? Like if you're a 1L, you might go to office hours, but you don't have your civil procedure professor sitting with you studying and helping you understand how to get better and building your confidence. And so for me, the thing that lots of things excite me about AI, but one thing that excites me is finding the places where we have not done a good job at infusing where we need to put humans to make people be better at what they do and figure out solutions. And it makes me crazy when people are so resistant to that, as though it's already working really well with humans and as though we were going to directionally move there anyway.
Yes. So threading together some of the stuff you just said to some reference I made, where the construct that we bring to education that I like, and I'll just spit out some of my pet peeves. Like Jason Marty, our CEO at Lumio, he, I think it's actually from one of his family members who is an educator, that, the worst thing we have done to education in this country is that children enter schools as question marks and then they leave as periods.
100%. I love that.
Yeah. When we really need to be teaching people to ask better questions, right? And then so this drive towards certainty, drive toward, kind of completion and check marks and gold stars around like individual competency, I think that is creating a false sense of like, okay, you have completed this and now you're ready, right? I think that's like super, super misleading. But with AI, I think that we are applying some of the same fallacies and same like follies, where individual evaluations to AI is simply beside the point in my view, right? Like, I think that we need to actually, as you said, think about, well, what's the human in the loop? Like, how do we build an ecosystem where the artificial intelligence makes human intelligence like more curious, more effective, like more open, more empathetic, because that is a possibility. Instead, we're putting like AI through its paces in some isolated testing setting, just like we do to kids, right? And then so to me, it's about systems thinking and like total quality. Like Deming, who's like the father of the total quality school of thought, like has this great analogy. Like, okay, if you took the best like components, like automobile components, like the best brakes, like the best air intake, the best engine, the best like transmission, and you tried to put it together, the car wouldn't even run. Building the best performing car has to do with coherence of the choices, right? And then so looking at teams, looking at organizations, looking at just like any unit of human functioning, and then thinking about how the introduction of this super powerful new capability can like really raise the ceiling for what that unit can accomplish. It requires a refactoring, rethinking of what each of our jobs are. Like, what do we owe to each other? And what do we hope to get out of this collaboration, right? There is that kind of value exchange always happening within teams, within organizations, across organizations. We need to be thinking about like, okay, what is the time, attention, and money and effort investment we need to make into AI to help it help us, right? And it's not about like buying things out of the box and expecting it to make us better. I mean, like, I totally leased a Peloton and then like I got zero value out of it because I didn't use it. And then when I started using it, it was good, right? So it is like not a thing that you buy and it does stuff for you. Like, it's something that requires changes in habits of mind and habits of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the other reason I find it so interesting as a technology and also like difficult to talk to really most people about is because they want to map it onto the last technological wave that they experienced and equate it, which I get, right? That's just a human tendency. But it's also one of the most democratized general purpose technologies in history. So we have the ability as leaders who've been able to develop in this profession to help shape what we do with it in collaboration with juniors and law students. But the reality is they can figure out how to do with it whatever they want to do with it. Like there's no permission needed. Although I do worry, to the point of law schools, about the mindset in law schools around it being cheating and having like a very punitive tone, and law students being very risk averse and worried about their ability to sit for the bar. And like they're walking in potentially even further behind most young people, because like if you go across campus to your business school, those professors are bringing it into the classroom. They're trying to figure out how it works for your teamwork in, a strong business school. And I think it's a very different experience in the law school context. And that does concern me.
I have like a basic analogy that I think will help like the students. One of my concerns about the generation after me, and I am older than I look, I did learn to drive before, as some people had like the Garmin GPS and they had $1 bazillion. But it's like before smartphones, before whatever. I think like sometimes you could print out MapQuest directions, but I definitely learned to read a map. I learned, how roads are laid out. Even now I can generally tell which way is north, if I like think about it hard enough. And then the kids that learn to drive with, like Waze and like maps from Apple and Google, I think that they kind of skipped all that thinking. To me, though, those skills are not obsolete because they help you become self-reliant, like if you should lose your phone, right? And then so the studying for the bar and like kind of the individual competency testing, that framework that's going to stay in place for probably forever, quite some time, it maybe might evolve. Rather than kind of bring a sense of anxiety to it, I think, driving towards some sense of empowerment, that even if I don't, in a situation where I don't have access to all of my support network, I can still do it because I have learned and internalized like skills that are going to be useful. And like they actually kind of ask what's in it for me and focus on that. I think that will help with their emotional resilience. The punitive tone is not helping. I absolutely could not agree with you more there. I think we really do need to revisit what we mean by cheating, because there's a level of really dishonesty that is at issue in a profession where integrity and trust are paramount. And then so we really need to define like, well, what are you representing? Like when you turn in this work product, when you turn in this assignment, what are you representing? That it represents your best efforts with the best available tooling? Or is it your best efforts like when you're locked in a room with nothing, right? And it is just more about that honesty and candor and like clarity, really, the institution needs to provide about like, well, why are we even doing this and what's being evaluated and why and how is that meant to help you, right? So not be on the process or the kind of sanctity of the traditions of the profession, but like, maybe we can focus on the development of the students who are actually paying tuition to develop themselves, right? And like having that of students as customers, I think is something that institutions would benefit from. But I also think that students might benefit from reorienting their relationship to AI as a companion, as a tool, as like a resource. So one piece of advice I have for law students is to try using AI in one of two ways, or in two separate ways, and to do both of these things. Take something that you're really good at personally that has nothing to do with work or your career, right? Maybe you're great at knitting, like you love crafts. Like maybe you're amazing, like, sports better. You love sports. Try to, build like something with AI that's going to help help other people gain access to your expertise. So take the role of the expert and think about AI as the helper. And then on the flip side, take the, mindset of the novice, use AI to explore something that you're actually interested in learning. And then I think by going through those experiences, it's going to open their minds to the possibilities. So at Lumio, we focus on the business side of the law, right? We're building AI teams that are meant to help high-performing lawyers actually manage everything else in their business as to, their go-to-market, like their client and opportunity choices, client care. How do you actually build like everything else that's not legal work? Like, how do you manage the client dialogue? How do you build client relationships? All the way to kind of the commercial aspects of, offering your services for fees, and how do you have hard conversations with clients about money and all that. One of the reasons that I think there is a really subtle but powerful proposition in there is we're not attacking the surface area where the lawyers know best. We're not attacking a surface area that's got all kinds of like regulatory professional responsibility concerns. These are things that, high performing lawyers are motivated to do well, to present their capabilities, to attract clients, to care for their clients and provide excellent client service, to grow those relationships, right? By lowering barriers and kind of placing AI in a configuration that's meant to help them succeed at the things they already want to do. I think that if we are successful, we're going to open a lot of minds about other possibilities of AI. And then so I constantly encourage lawyers to use AI in their personal lives for something they care about. And I think that for now, it is that mind-opening exercise that we really need to focus on.
Yeah. Well, it's a great note to end on, Jae. I wish that I could spend 5 more hours with you, but I do want to be respectful of your time. And I want you to get back to doing all the things to drag us into the future and make the world a better place. But I really want to thank you for the analysis you do. Encourage listeners to go out and find it and read it and continue to follow your thoughts, because you make me smarter every time I read you or get to talk to you. Any closing thoughts as we sign off?
Yeah, I will take a page from your book. One of the reasons I enjoy talking to you, like personally and in public and working with you, is that I think the other thing that we constantly need to gift each other to remind ourselves is to encourage. It's like one of my favorite words. I think Jen Leonard is one of the most encouraging people I know. The word is great because it like literally means to help people have courage, right?
I love that.
Yeah, the future is unknown, but like the future belongs to the people who build it. And it can, and I think it will be great, but we need courageous people to go forth, go find the new possibility, to go do all the things. And thank you for being a fellow traveler on that journey.
Oh, thank you, friend. I'm so grateful to get to travel with you and looking forward to following all the cool things you're doing. And thank you for spending your time here today with all of us and with PLI's listeners. And to everyone out there, thank you for tuning in for the final episode of Fast Tracked Season 2. I know you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and we'll see you in the future. And until then, be well. I hope you enjoyed this fascinating conversation as much as I did. Visit pli.edu for more insights, education, and resources for navigating this dynamic landscape. And until next time, stay curious and stay adaptable as we work together to chart a course into an exciting future.